In this video I will show you how to replace the upper control arms on 2004 to 2008 Ford F-150 pickup trucks. Step number 1. Park the truck on a flat surface, set the emergency brake and place blocks in front and behind the rear wheels for safety. Raise the front of the truck using a hydraulic floor jack and place jack stands under the chassis for safety. 2. Remove the wheel center cover by prying it out with a small pry bar or flathead screwdriver. 3. Remove the wheel lug nuts using an impact tool and a 21 mm socket. Once you have removed the lug nuts, proceed to remove the wheel. 4. Remove the cotter pin from the nut that fastens the outer steering tie rod end using needle nose pliers. 5. Next, loosen, but do not remove completely the nut using an impact tool or ratchet and a 21 mm socket. 6. Separate the steering tie rod end from the steering knuckle using a tie rod end separator tool or by hitting the center of the tie rod end stud with a punch and hammer. Once the tie rod end has been detached from the steering knuckle, remove the nut and proceed to disconnect it completely. 7. Remove the 3 nuts that hold the shock absorber at the top using a 15 mm nut wrench, or a ratchet and a 15 mm socket. 8. Place a hydraulic floor jack under the lower control arm and apply light pressure against it. Next, proceed to remove the lower shock bolt nut using a ratchet or an impact tool and a socket. Hold the bolt using a wrench on the other while you loosen the nut. 9. Next, remove the bolt completely by hitting it outwards using a punch and a hammer as shown in the image. 10. Insert a pry bar between the bottom of the shock absorber and the lower control arm and proceed to pry it outwards to release it. Once free, remove the shock absorber completely by pulling it out with your hands. 11. Loosen, but don't remove completely the upper ball joint nut using an impact tool or a ratchet and a 19 mm socket. 12. Disconnect the upper ball joint from the steering knuckle using a ball joint disconnect tool or by hitting the center of the ball joint stud with a punch and a hammer to release it as shown in the picture. Maintain light pressure against the lower control arm using the hydraulic jack and proceed to remove the upper control arm nut. 13. Paint alignment marks to mark the relationship between the bolts and the frame and proceed to remove the nuts from the bolts that hold the upper control arm using a ratchet or impact tool and a 21 mm wrench on the other end as shown in the image. 14. Next, remove the 2 bolts by pulling them out with your hand and remove the upper suspension control arm by simply pulling it out with your hands. 15. Install the new upper suspension control arm in its original position and proceed to install the bolts that hold it in place. Install the nuts respectively but do not fully tighten them yet. 16. Install the rest of the components in the reverse order in which they were removed, ensuring that all nuts are torqued according to the specifications listed in your owner's manual. 17. Place the hydraulic floor jack under the lower control arm, and raise the jack calculating the normal height above the floor of the truck. Align the bolts to match the marks you made earlier and tighten the nuts that hold the upper control arm completely according to the specifications listed in your owner's manual. Repeat the same procedure to replace the upper control arm on the other side. 18. Once both control arms have been replaced, install the wheels and partially tighten the lug nuts. 19. Lower the truck to the ground, tighten the wheel lug nuts to the specifications listed in your owner's manual and reinstall the wheel center caps. 20. Take the truck for a test drive to ensure that everything works correctly and the truck doesn't pull to one side due to incorrect wheel alignment. Note, it is highly recommended that you take the truck to a qualified repair facility and have them perform a wheel alignment using the proper wheel alignment equipment. This way your tires won't wear unevenly. That's how simple it is to replace the upper suspension control arms on 2004 to 2008 Ford F-150 pickup trucks.